couple people recently have commented that my personality is starting to come out and I really like it. And that seems to be on the videos where I act entirely unhinged. So, yes, that is my real personality. I'm insane. But I have cramps today. I feel like crap. So this is gonna be a medium energy video. Anyways, what is the video about? Welcome back to my channel. Hello. Thanks for joining me. I have just finished reading two of the most exceptional books I've read in a very, very long time. One of them is a 5-star for sure, and then one of them ultimately ended up being a 4-star, but I still want to include it in this because these are both extremely underrated fantasy novels that I think everyone should read. Now, by the time this video comes out, one of them might be more well regarded because the Broken Binding just revealed what their like special edition of it is going to be, and people are starting to take notice. But I still think that not enough people have read it yet, and it's like really flying under the radar. Of course I'm talking about The Will of the Many by James Islington. So I think I mentioned in one of my other videos that when this book was released, it got like no hype. I really think that Saga Press did not do this justice in their marketing. His name's so small at the bottom, so I pulled it out of the box and I was like, what is this? Some kind of like Roman or Greek myth retelling? What is this? James Islington! So this is book 1 of a brand new series called The Hierarchy. No, Hierarchy? Just Hierarchy. Book 1. Book list quoted on the back that this is reminiscent of Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, and I definitely agree with that. Mostly when it comes to the magic system, I felt that it was just so simple and concise and easy to understand with just enough mystery to like, you know, they can use their powers to do things that you're like, huh? But it doesn't matter because the writing and explanations are so good. Magic in this book is called Will, and it is very familiar feeling. Like it is very much like, what the heck is the magic called in Warbreaker? Investiture, that's what it's called. Okay, so in this book, people can imbue things with their will. I don't want to go into too much detail on how the magic system actually works or just like how the hierarchy itself actually works because I think you should just experience it for yourself firsthand. This is probably the first book in a very long time that I've immediately wanted to reread. It was incredible. I listened to the audiobook, and I have previously said that The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi was the best audiobook I'd ever listened to. That's second now. Will of the Many, best audiobook I've ever listened to. The main character Vis, his backstory is devastating, but he still feels like a real 17-year-old being thrust into the situations you find him in. And although this kind of puts him in a chosen one trope, which notoriously is my least favorite trope, it feels different this time. One thing that is especially different, and this isn't really a spoiler because you pick up on this pretty quickly, is that he is the only character in a world of magic users that's actually not using magic. So instead of, you know, the one character, the chosen one character is the only one with these like incredible powers that they're discovering and blah blah blah. We've seen that all before. He's like, I don't need magic. I'm gonna use my smarts and my body to solve my problems. Like Sokka from Avatar, but way more serious. He's clever and resourceful and physically capable and damaged and funny and impulsive and angry and perfect. Am I in love with a 17-year-old boy? The side characters were also incredible in this. I loved every single one. The like mean kids at the school were not actually just like one-dimensional mean kids. They had very good reasons to be the bratty bitches that they were. And we actually get a whole bunch of really cool, strong female characters. Yay! And strong, fun male characters. Honestly, gender just felt irrelevant throughout this entire book. There was a bit of mention of like gender roles and certain characters breaking those, but it didn't feel like, you know, the girl characters were strong because they were girls. They were just awesome. And that being said, I think everyone's struggling in this hierarchy world because there's a tax levied against any gender if they don't have children by the time they're 23, because the point of the hierarchy is to continue creating new people to seed to the hierarchy. So everyone has to be in a heterosexual relationship and produce children by the time they're 23 to keep the hierarchy going, or else they have to pay extra money. So nobody can be gay because you can't have kids. that's like not even touched on. It's briefly mentioned, but it's stuck in my head. Oh my gosh, and we need so many more fantasy worlds inspired by the Roman Empire. This was fantastic. It felt unique, even though the Roman Empire it feels like it should be so basic when it comes to fantasy, but it's really not. It led to some awesome, like familiar and easy to understand world building aspects, as well as some super fun names for people and things, a Colosseum scene, and some of the most horrific violence I've ever encountered in a book. I am not a squeamish person. The more violent my books are, the better. This unsettled me. I won't go into further detail, just read it. I haven't even read Lycanius yet. This was my first ever James Islington, and I'm obsessed. I think Lycanius has just jumped to the top of my TBR. And I'm gonna read it. I've heard that the plots are like similar. Let me know if that's wrong. Obviously set in like very different world buildings. And honestly though, if the plots are similar, that's okay, because like I said, I want to reread this book. So if I can read a new book that's the same as this one, great. Any cons with this? Yes. I'm still giving this 5 stars. This is probably my top read of the year and has been added to my favorite reads of all time list. I have 2 cons. One, I got over. There was like a bait and switch like twist that at first I was like, nah, that doesn't make sense. I don't really get that. But I got through that. I learned to appreciate it. It wasn't like that crazy for me. The second one, I need to say what it is because I need to explain myself. So skip to this point if you don't want a minor spoiler. But did we really need a 3rd act wolf pup? No. That was like the most random trope to throw into this book. We're 3/4 through the book, and then, we're running from the bad guys on a time crunch, but we gotta rescue a wolf pup real quick, and then, I guess, duh, the wolf pup's gonna come back later as a full-grown wolf and save the day. Wolf ex machina. Did we need that? No. Anyways, we're back from that little minor spoiler. If I could give you just a couple of buzzwords to get you to read this book, I would say that it's giving dark academia meets grimdark fantasy meets Stormlight Archive meets Roman Empire meets Name of the Wind meets with some of the best initial world building I have ever read. Okay, so yeah, 5 stars, 5 million stars, super underrated. It is starting to come out a bit into the public eye, I would say, but it's been out for a few months and people have not been giving it the love it deserves. So please buy this right now and read it and then scream about it with me. The next book that I want to talk about, I actually started reading before The Will of the Many, and I was loving it. I was like, this is gonna be a 5-star read. Easy peasy, 5 stars. But I took a break to read The Will of the Many. I don't know why, it was kind of spontaneous. And then when I came back to The Hand of the Sun King by J.T. Greathouse, I was like, not as good anymore. But that is me fully just letting The Will of the Many sort of affect and blind me to the merits of other books, is what I'll say. So The Hand of the Sun King, quite similar premise-wise, I would say, to The Will of the Many. We've got a boy who his lineage is that of an outlaw, or, wow, my brain's not working today. It's the cramps. My womb is in my brain. His lineage is bad. It's against the Empire, but he's fooling people into thinking he's from the Empire, and he's working his way up through the ranks, etc., etc. So instead of Roman, now we're going Imperial Japan, possibly. It's not super obvious which Asian culture we're pulling from here. So this one starts off very much vaguely Asian, Name of the Wind. We've got the character Wen Alder sort of telling us about his life and his rise to, I wouldn't say power, but rise to learning magic and what happens along the way in a Name of the Wind style, but much shorter. I adored the world building of this. Again, I'm a sucker for good world building, and this had it. The political system and the reign of the Cian Empire was really cool, and the more we learn about it and how everything works and where the Cian Empire sort of came from, I like it even more. So on his father's side, Wen Alder is a member of the Cian Empire, the reigning culture. And then on his mother's side, he is Nyani, so a witch is all I'll say about that. He's a witch. So he's inheriting two different types of magic that interact interestingly together. One thing that's interesting to the Nyani heritage is that they are given different names by the gods. We learn in chapter 1 that his true name is Foolish Cur. It's a prophetic name. So Foolish Cur is who he truly is. And that lets us know that the whole book, this boy is gonna make the worst decisions. And I just found it so cool knowing that everything he does is not gonna work out. Is that a spoiler? Not really, because some things do work out. But I did find it to be different than normal Chosen One stories where the Chosen One is the hero, and yeah, he does some heroic things, but he has a rough go of it. Is it weird to say I loved an annoying protagonist? Yes, but I did. Originally, I thought that this book had a very poor portrayal of women and female characters because towards the start of the book, the only female characters we're presented with are described specifically as being like weak and overly emotional and like useless and pathetic, essentially. But towards the end, women do make a comeback in a big way. So you had me in the first half, JT Greathouse. If you don't like time jumping, you're not gonna like this book. Since he's sort of retelling this story to us, we are just seeing the major events of over a certain number of years. I'm not even sure how many years it is. So the transitions for me between major events or times in his life were all too quick. This book is so short. I would have loved for it to be a sweeping epic, but I'm not the author. Since I read both of those in August, I'm gonna actually make this also my August wrap-up video because I haven't done a lot of reading in the month. I want to talk about the book I'm currently reading. I'm about halfway through it now, and it is Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker. I was hoping to add this to like the underrated fantasy books you need to read right now, but I don't think I'm adding it to that. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just so different than what I'm used to. On paper, this one sounds very interesting. It's set in a world where demons and demigods and all kinds of crazy creatures like that walk among everyday people. Two princes are born into a kingdom where they have to pass the test of fire to find out if they're gonna sit on the throne later in life. They pass it, but so does the daughter of a demon lord. The daughter is shunned by the kingdom, nobody wants her to sit on the throne, and the demon lord decides to take his vengeance. Sounds cool, right? My biggest issues with this book so far are just the way it's written. It's fully omniscient, so you're head hopping all the time. You always know what everyone's thinking. There's no like mystery in that, and it's very much just told. At first I was thinking like, wow, this really feels like I'm just reading a factual like retelling of an actual myth, and then I realized that's what it is. So Ashok K. Banker has a translation of the myth that this is based on, and then this is his fantasy interpretation of that myth as well. So yeah, it is really like the person did this, the other guys there thought this because that person was actually this, and there's no mystery to it, there's no surprise. It's very just saying and not showing, but for some reason I can't stop reading it. The world of the Burnt Empire is so cool, so brutal, horrific. This story has so many tangents. There was a whole chapter from the perspective of a crow, and then there was a chapter from the perspective of a fish, and then one from a vulture. Now I've had 3 chapters in a row from a princess that seems to have nothing to do with the rest of the story. We're in the middle of a battle, but let's take a second to go to 3 chapters from some princess in some other part of the kingdom that literally has nothing to do with what's going on. That being said, the battle scenes are awesome. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm adding this to the list of underrated fantasy that you should probably read because I can't stop reading it despite all of my issues with it. And lastly, another book I finished in August was A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Very different from the other books I've talked about so far. What is this book? Is it romance? Is it horror? Is it fantasy? I don't know. I hated this book. I don't like saying I hated books, but I listened to the audiobook to be fair, and it was so short that even though I was not enjoying it all, I was like, I'm just gonna finish it so I can say I finished it. And I really didn't like it. It was very pretty. The writing is nice, but nothing happened. It's told over a couple centuries, I think, because they're vampires, and it's her telling the story of her life with Dracula, but not Dracula because he's never named a Dracula, but we all know he's Dracula. This might just be my personal preference that I don't like stories that are told as a story. Does that make sense? Like, I don't like books that are a character telling a story, except for The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. I love that one. So again, it's a case of there was so much just telling and not showing because she's just telling the story of what happened over her life with not Dracula. And when it comes down to it, as a romance, which is what this is, it very much feels like S.T. Gibson was just like, I want to tell the story of a very toxic DDLG relationship, but make them vampires. This story had nothing to do with them being vampires. They were vampires, and they struggled a little bit with immortality, but not really. It was like a afterthought. And yeah, they killed people and drank blood, but the drinking blood ultimately was mostly just for during the sex times. It was like, we want to have kinky sex, so let's add some blood into it. The main thing that I've seen people complain about for this book is that Dracula calls her little one and stuff like that, but that's just a kink. That's just kink shaming, okay? Stop that. The actual problem is that the book is boring. Anyways, I'm gonna stop crapping on this book because I know people love it and I don't want to get yelled at. I'm just not a fan of romance. I think that's where I went wrong, is it mismarketed to me. I was told it was like a horror slash fantasy romance. It's just a romance, guys. So if you like toxic relationships, give that one a go. I gave it 2 stars. That's all for me today. Before I go, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell icon so you know when I upload new videos. I upload 3 days a week. Also, don't forget to read The Will of the Many, The Hand of the Sun King, and if you want, Plot a Burning Throne, and A Diary of Blood, if you want. I love you guys. Goodbye. I can't reach the camera to turn it off. Come here. Goodbye.